I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen Experience, the holiday party menu pre-1980s. Before parties became just a bag of Doritos or Lipton onion dip, Ruffles, and a 2-liter of soda, we were faced with what can only be described as interesting. However imaginative, the 80s dumped the visually intriguing options for ease and convenience. Except for one or two. You'll know them when you see them. It's long been a tradition during the cooler weather that accompanies the holidays to bring the outside in. The tree, holly, garland of fir and pine needles. But this is ridiculous. A party can never have enough cheese, and never was that truer than in the 70s, when the ultimate party appetizer was a good old cheese ball from our most anticipated guest, Hickory Farms. A holiday visit to one of their mall locations was like being a kid in a candy store. They popularized the original blend cheese ball, but others would take matters into their own hands and may have gone overboard with these. Cheese balls were easy party pleasers, with their raw nut-covered fancy exterior hiding the delectable dairy inside, savored only when the cracker finally broke the shell. Although I'm both fascinated and a bit put off by the cheese pine cone, I can't say why. I never imagined scooping up some smoky cheddar onto my little lone pecan, but as the nut-covered cheese ball has managed to survive the decades, I'm all for giving it a try. How about you? Balled up, slathered over, filled with, or any other way to serve it, cream cheese was the wonder cheese that worked wonders on any holiday party. Often mixed with ingredients and rolled into another cheese ball option, or as the base to ornate canapes, cream cheese was always the star of the party. You might be into balls, but others prefer a log, and what's not to like? Still, others fancy a loaf, with anything from shrimp, chicken bacon, or pecan fruit layered inside. Cream cheese moved to the outside as a frosting glaze for the luxurious loaf. Although the shapes have changed and recipes evolved, or devolved depending on how you look at it, the simple convenience of the versatile filly still surprises us today, only in a far less interesting fashion. Not the most original, but inventive. The hard work you put into the intimate and attractive fondue is seen far less today. A late 60s through 70s social experiment of bonding over a hot cauldron while heating your meat or dipping a treat was about as communal as you can get. But since communes were going out of style by the turn of the 80s, fondue was left to the melting pot, and even those are getting fewer and farther between, thanks to today's youth avoiding social circumstances, unless it's social media. Your fondue set said a lot about you. What color was your raised hot pot? Did it come as a whole set or stand alone? Natural tones were definitely a hit at the time, but it was the bonding that was the real high. Or was that just the sterno? Imagine the charm of approaching the crock pot of boiling oil, hoping to cross sticks with that fox you saw across the room. And then the sheer joy of making a connection after losing your beef to the boiler. Poor fondue. We hardly knew ya. Did we ever have pork before the Polynesian craze of the mid-century? The 60s and 70s made sure to give us every possible version of the pig pleasures and threw in some pineapple to seal the tiki motif these dishes were meant to convey. A cultural hallmark of the time, these exotic themes were a hit in the US, especially after Hawaii's statehood, and their island cuisine came to the continent. To everyone's surprise, the veritable smorgasbord of ham was spread out before us in party favorites like finely grilled and delicately impaled green peppers and pineapples to complement the ham skewers. Of course, you could substitute the ham for beef and have some Hawaiian meatballs over rice. Both dishes are delicious and high society. Sometimes we had to just keep it cheap and opted for deviled ham. You could put that shit on everything, and although we might have moved past the deviled ham log roll and cream cheese and mayo, the can with the little red devil would not disappear, only spread to dozens of finger sandwiches, or even this devil's tower. Made of Wonder Bread, no doubt. Every kitchen required Pyrex, and Pyrex served only the best party food, like Spam. Spam skyrocketed in popularity after its major role as a ration in World War II and its introduction to war-torn areas. Hawaiians embraced it, and so it arrived stateside with the rest of Polynesia, and homemakers quickly delighted in the diversity of use from simple spam and eggs to spam sticks. Spam's meaning has never been confirmed, but what do you think? Is it a contraction of spiced ham or an acronym for shoulder of pork and ham, what it's made from? You may not know its name, but you've seen it and probably tasted it. Rumaki first became popular during the tiki bar era of the mid-20th century. By the 70s, the original water, chestnut, and chicken liver center was replaced with, what else? Spam, among other things. But still wrapped in bacon and still trending. A trend that managed to stick around for decades because trends used to be able to do that. Nowadays, food trends can last for mere hours, but I still snag a bit of this treat at my neighborhood Chinese buffet. After all, a dish that's this good is never really out of style. When pig was sparse or you wanted to mix it up, any random meat would do. The Vienna sausage and cocktail weenie could be part pig and be imaginatively displayed when served up cold, on a tree, on a skewer, or suspended in jello. But more on that in a minute. Who cares what kind of meat it is when it looks as delectable as these magical little nibbles that still made it onto the party table during the 1970s? Meat trees were popular. Wait, what am I saying? Anything shaped like a tree was an engineering marvel to your guests. If not cute sausages precariously protruding from a green conical cone, Oscar Mayer folded tightly would do, and lots of it. With a base of broccoli, rolled bologna or summer sausage secured with toothpicks were often finished off with the unofficial holiday garnish, the olive. Its natural green hue and the ever-popular red pimento center scream Christmas. Topped with a birthday candle for additional sophistication, it may not have been the charcuterie board just yet. But hell, we couldn't even pronounce charcuterie back then. Designing a holiday party menu was an art form. Hostesses prided themselves on their creative output and longed to one-up even their best friends, as well as their worst enemies they were forced to invite. The planning, the preparation, and the execution, not to mention the presentation of the food, was almost more important than the taste. As is obvious with anything floating in, gelatin. By now it's time to wash down some of that overprocessed meat product with a little punch. Punch that comes with a kick. So many recipes and so easy. Hawaiian punch, or tang if that's all you got, were a great starter. Limeade and about a gallon of 7-Up or Sprite garnished with your favorite fruit wasn't complete without a heaping scoop of berry sherbet. These weren't served in just any punch bowl either, but a carefully crafted crystal bowl with matching cups hanging off the sides. Or the exact same thing, but in plastic. This was the 70s. Now that you've given your mouth a good rinse, you look over the edge of the table at all the glistening and colorful pieces of art to try, and there, next to one of the many ashtrays, were the deviled eggs. Delicious! Little has changed with this finger food, but why mess with near perfection? Oh, there are tiny modifications since its rise in power, but it has yet to topple. Thank God it continues to be part of annual holiday soirees today. Are they a mainstay at your holiday gathering? And what goes perfect with a little filled egg? A garnish from the relish tray. Brined as much as the meats, the pickled greens in this very familiar partitioned glass serving dish felt more like a healthier choice. But who were we fooling? And they weren't always green. Pickles of various kinds were a must-have, but black olives and maybe even purple beets would round out the color palette of these bite-sized tidbits. Now it's time to dig into a helping of the otherworldly and unholy concoction made of gelatin. An abomination! I have convinced myself that this isn't just a generational thing, but some sort of brainwashing. Or else everyone just had excessive bad taste. It didn't matter what or how, parties went hog wild with this short-lived, inexcusable excuse for a holiday dish. Jell-O was certainly a thing, and it came in different flavors too. But this wasn't Jell-O pudding, but the opaque and bright-colored sweet treat that would catch fire in the next decade with handy snack cups. But before this brand was hawked by a dethroned comedy legend, Jell-O's stripped-down base lent itself to its space-age origins of the 60s. In the tasteless gelatin, everything from spam, shrimp, vegetables, and of course olives were suspended in what I thought was only meant to be decorative. not edible. Then there was tomato aspic. Even the name dares you to try it. Tomato juice, spices, and gelatin. Add some bacon and some vodka, and you've got a Jell-O Bloody Mary shot. Dig in. Gelatin was not the dessert you were looking for during the holidays. Dessert came disguised as ambrosia. Dessert? Side dish? Salad? You decide with this Cool Whip concoction of fruit, coconut, and marshmallows. This, along with Watergate's salad, another dichotomy, paired well alongside your turkey and gelatin main dish.
I've had all these sweets, and I think I'm going to get something salty. I thought maybe some...
I know many of you out there remember a bowl or basket of mixed nuts proudly displayed during the holidays. A shiny decorative hand nutcracker rested comfortably in the pile, waiting for the next finger to pinch, along with a dental pick for digging out the meat of the legume. Get your nutcracker ready and crack open walnuts, almonds, filberts, pecans, and Brazil nuts for a much needed crunch. But nothing crunched more satisfyingly than Chex Mix. How many of you still try to incorporate one of the hundreds of different recipe combinations? There are some over-the-top variations today, but nothing beats those original mixes. Continuing to stay relevant, they no longer have the same footing they once did when a warm, fresh bowl impressed your most discernible guests. What about fish? Well, just like everything else, seafood found itself in salmon balls and fish dip, not to mention tuna shaped like Christmas trees. There were shrimp cocktail and crab cakes, and crab floating in jello, so the ocean was represented with endless possibilities. If you had an abundance of crackers for your seafood dip, then the poor man's canape was an elegant addition. Instead of a piece of bread to mount an ornate edible, decorative toppings were instead stacked on a Ritz cracker. I remember eating Ritz, a plain old Ritz, or maybe with some Cheese Whiz squirted on. But the back of the box sparked my imagination. The upscale transformations depicted rose the Ritz to five-star restaurant appetizer when covered in guacamole, pulled pork, or a jalapeno. I don't remember ever having a cracker so elevated. Did you go all out when putting on the Ritz? After being stuffed of high-fat and salty bite-sized holiday appetizers, sip your champagne spritzer with some sweet butter mints, straight out of that glass dish perfectly suited for the 70s. The 70s looked lawless when it came to party foods like the crown roast of frankfurters filled with cabbage and topped with pimentos, but you can't deny their style. If you're still keeping any of these traditions alive, you were raised right. It takes some time, effort, and patience to make food look this good. And most of all, it takes passion to do what was being done back during the Gen Experience, which were extensions of those late 50s and 60s holiday staples. The 80s would keep only a couple of these on life support, while more convenient snack foods became the norm. But deviled eggs and cheese balls, they're not going anywhere. Thanks for joining me on a look at some of the last great holiday party foods in the 1970s. Great may not be the right word, more like great-ish. And if you're hungry for more, please click that like and subscribe and let me know your thoughts on these dishes and enjoy other great shows from the Gen Experience. Until next time, happy Thanksgiving.